On today's episode...
I drink heaps, I eat real shitty food, I don't work out, I swear a bunch. That was like identity crisis time for me. That was like, I'm in America, I've just made it, I've got this visa, and I'm broke. But Double Dare was really a catalyst because it was because of Double Dare that I then met Quintin and was at the auditions. And so, you know, those things in life that you're just like, holy shit. Found out that I literally was the only person who put ketchup on my pizza.
Yum! Delicious. Skinny. Hungry. Cake. Fat. Scale. Nutrition. Fitness. Strength. Longevity. Calories. Body image. Craving. Lose weight.
What does it all mean?
Hungry. Adjective. Having a strong craving or desire. Stunt girl. Noun. One who takes calculated risks to yield extraordinary or magical outcomes.
You're listening to the Hungry Stunt Girl podcast.
Here's your host, Heidi Germain Schnapoff.
We're back. Welcome to the Hungry Stunt Girl podcast. I am Heidi Germain Schnapoff, professional stuntwoman for film and television. And today we return with episode 10 after a pretty lengthy hiatus. But let me tell you, it was definitely worth the wait. I've been super fortunate to have been working the past few months on a few TV shows, and although it's been kind of weird working under the COVID procedures and rules and being tested like several times a week, it is what we do for the job that we love. And I am more than grateful for the opportunity just to be able to work. So I did the math, and between the end of September and the end of the year, I have had 82 COVID tests. I could be off by a few, but I'm pretty sure I did the math right. Anyway, I took this break as an opportunity to set up a new season with some older interviews and some pretty killer new ones, including one coming up that I'm doing with a real life astronaut who is also a physician. I'm going to put it out there again this week and next that if you have any questions for an astronaut, you can email me at heidi@thehungrystuntgirl.com, or you can email me just directly through my website, which is thehungrystuntgirl.com. And of course, feel free to drop into my DMs on Instagram at thehungrystuntgirl. You can email or message a voice memo, or just text is fine. If you already have submitted a question on Instagram, I have saved it, and I will definitely ask the question. Okay, so today's interview was so intense and so full of such good stuff that I did not want to cut it short, so I broke it up into two separate shows. So this is part one. This is probably also the first time I've felt a little nervous, actually, interviewing someone. I'm already not the best interviewer, I understand that. But this person has been instrumental in my career as far as inspiration and motivation. And I mean, talk about a woman who does it all and has a personality and the character to back up the talent, because I mean, we talked about everything from her childhood to the movie that introduced me to her, to her relationship with Quintin Tarantino, and her eventual move into the role of a stunt coordinator, producer, and director. I hope you enjoy part one of my interview with the amazingly kind and talented, the one, the only, Ms. Zoe Bell.
Hungry. Stunt girl.
Today's guest got her big break in New Zealand when she stepped in to be the new stunt double for Lucy Lawless in the TV series Xena Warrior Princess. With notoriety from the show, she got on a plane to the US to score her first major film role in the iconic Tarantino film Kill Bill Parts 1 and 2 as the stunt double for The Bride, played by Uma Thurman. Her credits following that film include other Quintin Tarantino films, such as the stuntwoman-centric movie Deathproof, where she played her own namesake and was her own stunt double, followed by an avalanche of other major films and television shows, including Alias, Inglorious Basterds, The Proposal, Final Destination, Thor Ragnarok, and making her full stunt coordinating debut while also acting in the Tarantino film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she played the part of the stunt coordinator's wife opposite Kurt Russell. She has expanded her extremely successful career as one of Hollywood's top stuntwomen to include actress, producer, and now director. She recently spearheaded and directed the viral quarantine video Boss Bitch Fight Challenge and has stunt coordinated and acted in the upcoming film Haymaker. Not only is this person undoubtedly one of the most hardworking, talented women I have ever met, She has a heart of gold and a stomach of steel. Her kindness and character know no bounds, and she continues to inspire and educate the next generation of women in this business with her candidness and desire to connect and collaborate. She puts ketchup on her pizza and beans on her toast, and I am more than thrilled to introduce to you my personal inspiration, Zoe Bell.
Yeah! Thank you for that amazing intro.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, I can send that to you so you can just wake up to that
I was going
every
to say,
morning.
can you send it to me in writing so I can just have Jacob read it to me every morning?
Every morning. And then, in a different voice maybe every morning so it feels like someone else is also introducing you.
And from different places in the room. I'll be like, I'll just keep my eye mask on. I'll be like, go somewhere else and do Daffy Duck.
Do Daffy Duck. Oh my goodness. Well, thanks again. Thank you so much for doing this. I've been trying to kind of work my way up in the guests that I've had, but I think this interview is actually the first one that I've been a little bit starstruck for, believe it or not. Yeah, I know, dork. But yeah, super stoked to have you and hear a little bit about where you grew up and kind of through your career a little bit, and then we'll get into some food. But
Give me some food. Well, I ramble, so I'll just ramble, and if I go spend too long in one section or I start diverting, you can just
I'll bump you back in.
Just reel me back in, yeah. Well, it all started when my dad was born in England in 1940. No, I'm kidding. I was born... Well, my parents are both British. Okay. They moved to an island off the coast of New Zealand called Waiheke. Well, my dad did. Ironically, I think my mom and dad were best friends since guys, so they were 18 or something like that. I think Dad probably always kind of had a bit of a thing for Mum. Mum married someone else. Dad was one of the groomsmen at Mum's first wedding. No. I know, it's so cute. There's a photo. No, there's a photo of her in her full English wedding gown and Dad's in a full suit and tux. And she's looking up at him laughing and he's looking down at her laughing. And you'd swear it was their wedding photo, but it's not.
That's hilarious.
The groom's somewhere else. They were all really good friends. Anyway, then Mum broke up with her first husband. This is really getting into the details. But then I think Dad was like, well, interesting. Now that you've broken up from your husband, now it makes me think maybe I am a bit interested. He tried on. She rebuted him. And I think... he's not one to really talk about it like that, but I think he was a bit heartbroken and he left England and came to New Zealand and got a locum because they both went to med school. He came to this island called Waiheke and he was the doctor there. My mum then went and did her OE, which is sort of, OE is overseas experience. It's a thing that a lot of Brits and Australians and New Zealanders do. They finish high school and they fuck off for a year, or they finish university and they fuck off for a year and go do your overseas experience before you settle into, careers and babies and all that sort of shit.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I never did it, so I think I'm due one. 42, I'm about ready for my OE, guys. But, so Mum then came to visit Dad in New Zealand on her big trip. And she was on her way to South America after that and never left. So then...
Oh, so sweet.
They stayed in New Zealand, had myself and my brother Jacob. I'm the oldest. But all of our extended family is British, except for one of my uncles, one of my mum's brothers, got a scholarship in biology or something, and he ended up leaving London and going to Oklahoma. So I have family in Oklahoma.
That's random.
I know, right? Spot. But kind of cool to have family over here.
Yeah.
And it's fun because it's family that we didn't see that much of, because going from New Zealand to England is, that's 24, 36 hours. Really expensive for the family of 4 and 2 kids. And Oklahoma, if they lived in LA, we would have seen them. But getting to Oklahoma on the way to England that's not even a thing.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to see the family because I now live in this country,
Yeah, England by way of Oklahoma doesn't sound...
No.
Right.
It's definitely not a shortcut, that's for sure. Yeah. So anyway, my brother and I, first generation Kiwis, we were both born on this little island, Waiheke, that used to be sort of hippies and stoners and potters and social rejects and hermits and stuff, and is now winemakers and yuppies and the rich folk that want a house on an island. And, it's still absolutely stunning and has a piece of my heart, always will, but it's it's a very different place to what we grew up in, So we were I was a little hippie kid. I used to eat horse shit out of the garden and I was naked all the time. And we weren't allowed, we didn't have air freshener in the house, and we didn't have Tylenol. We had homeopathics, and Dad did acupuncture, and, you know, so not a lot of sugar and stuff. But then we left there. My dad was a doctor and my mum was a nurse. Yeah.
Nurse, right.
Yeah. She then did sort of like real estate and a whole bunch of other stuff. She's a bit of an overachiever, really. She's kind of was good at everything. But yeah, they ran the surgery together on the island. Yeah.
Oh my
tiny
goodness.
Little surgery.
They worked together?
I know. Yeah,
Wow.
cute, eh? Must have looked quite picturesque. Like the doctor dad, nurse mum, two little blonde kids running around nude on a beach. And then they had some marital issues and ruined that whole picture. And we left the island and moved into a commune with a bunch of other like fucked up families for a year or so.
Oh my goodness. How old were you?
Left there.
When that
7 or 8. 7 or 8 when we were there. And then we lived with another family when we left the commune, and then another family, and then we moved into like what ended up being our family home sort of thing when I was about 9 or 10. My brother would have been about 5. And I had started doing bits of gymnastics because it was like one of the things that I loved. If I watched anything on the Olympics, if I was allowed to stay up late, it was sort of diving, ice skating, gymnastics, all the sort of acrobatic-y performance type stuff. So when we finally settled down when I was about 9, I started doing gymnastics, like recreational, you know, like mini tramp with a star jump and like touching your toe on the beam and, you know, little bows and shit like that. So I was doing that for a little while I was 9, and then one of the head coaches was like, we think she's got some talent. She's really behind because, you know, most of these kids started at 5.
Right.
But if she'd like to come and train in the club gymnastics, and I was like, well, I don't know what that means. So Mum took me, I remember the first day going in to watch the club kids train. And these teeny tiny little like 5 and 6-year-olds like flipping down the thing. Tick, 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 tick. I was like, I was kind of proud of myself for mastering a cartwheel. So I don't know how this is going to work because I don't know how to make my body do that. And I'm twice the size and I'm twice the age. And gym coach was like, well, we'll give it a go. If you're interested, we'll give it a go. I was like, all right, you know. So I would say that was probably the beginning of, unconsciously, but the beginning of what led me into the career I was in, because it was the first time there was a responsibility that came with the training. It wasn't just like turn up and jump on a mini tramp and have fun and then go home. It was like I owed it to my coaches to turn up. I owed it to my teammates to turn up. I had to get better every session. I was learning new stuff so that I could put it in a routine. It wasn't, you know, it was not recreational. It was directional, and it was the first time that I understood commitment to that sort of thing rather than just the fun of it, you know. I remember having a conversation with my mum one time and I was like, Mum, it's not fair. I never get to go hang out with my friends after school and everyone goes home with everyone else and I don't get to and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to go to gym today. And she sat me, it's another conversation I remember really clearly. She sat me down and she was like, well, here's the thing. The kind of gymnastics you're doing requires you to be there as often as you can. And we're paying for it and the coaches are investing in you and the other team members are relying on you. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. We'll stop it. But you can't do both. And I was like, well, I don't want to stop it. And she was like, well, then you should go. And I was like, fine. But it was like a real switch for me where I realized I was choosing to go.
You made the choice, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like a chore that I had to do. Mm-hmm. It was my choice to be going. And therefore, when the other option was to stop doing it, I was like, well, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I want both, Mum. She was like, you can't. Damn it. But so that was, those were the beginning lessons, I reckon, where you start going, I don't know, there's just a perspective shift. Yeah.
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 So we're at you're about 10, gymnastics. You chose gymnastics. Your first kind of, you think that's like your first chosen responsibility in I guess your life up until this point, because you've.
I would say so.
much.
I mean, aside from like the being big sister, which I very quickly took on as a responsibility, like before he even came out, I was like, he's mine. So
that's
you
good.
don't need to do anything because he's my little brother. Yeah.
I mean, it could go the other way where you'd want him in the trash can. So that's good.
Yes. Though I'm sure there's been times.
Well,
probably when we were a bit older, like right around when I was 13 and he was 7. Definitely some trash can moments for sure. But yeah, so I did gymnastics. We were then living in the city at that point.
What city?
I did Auckland.
Okay.
So we'd moved off the island. And so when we were living in the commune and a couple of we were sort of in the sticks, but we were still on the mainland. We'd moved off the island. And then the home that became sort of our family home was more in the city, in one of the suburbs of the city. So I did gymnastics for, how old was I? Started 9 through 16 probably, 15, 16. I think I stopped competing at 15, but kept training for another year because I couldn't quite let it go. And then when I realized I was getting too tall to carry that on, I was like, what do I do? I want to do something physical. And I kind of knew I wanted it to be a martial art. And this sounds terrible, I shouldn't admit it out loud, but less for the philosophy. I was never sort of like a martial artist fan. I just wasn't exposed to it. But I knew that it involved like throwing your legs around and jumping, and there was like, kata and pattern and stuff that kind of felt like the same sort of performance, and it used my whole body, and I watched people do it and I was like, that shit's impressive. I want to be able to do that. So moved into martial arts.
TV or movies or?
Well, even that, having been grown up, we grew up on, so we had a TV on the island. There was no movie theaters. So we watched a lot of videos. But it was a lot of like things taped off the TV. Parents would tape things off the TV for us, and we'd watch them on VHS.
Same.
There was not a lot of watching TV. I was allowed to watch MASH. It was one of my favorite fucking TV. I still love MASH. It makes me so happy. It's like hanging out with old friends watching
I love
MASH.
it. Yeah.
Right?
Love it.
Hawkeye, come on. Love it. Hawkeye and Honeycutt. And Matlock, I was allowed to watch. Matlock and Murder, She Wrote and all the mystery ones, I was allowed to watch those with my mum at night because she loved those. But we really didn't watch that much TV. It just wasn't...
Right.
It wasn't even that it wasn't allowed, but we were outside all the time. Yeah. And then the community, I don't know how many people were in there. Let's say there were 80 people living there, and there was like one TV with a little TV. Like I remember watching Jaws there, wishing I'd never watched it.
Oh no.
I wasn't scared watching it, but it definitely freaked me out about if I can't see beyond my feet in the water. I'm having to consciously meditate because it scares the shit out of me. Yeah, it's irrational, completely irrational. But so movies really wasn't a thing until I started getting involved in it, because then they started, things would be referenced, and I was like, what? I haven't seen that. And I'd watch and be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Or what, like Hong Kong flicks? I had never seen any of those until I started working on Xena, and the stunt guys would we'd all have a couple of drinks and watch the movies, or they'd reference them for a fight or whatever. And I was like, what? And I remember having a moment when I was like, I can't remember when it was. It must have been before Xena. I think it was kind of around when I started doing taekwondo, and I would stay behind and watch the black belts train, because that's the fun stuff to watch. That's what I want to be able to do when I grow up, and that's the inspiration. And watching white belts train is fucking boring.
Back you up just a second here. So you're from what I gathered, your dad met some dude, Pete Bell, right? Peter Bell, Pete Bell,
kind of,
sort of.
Well, so I would stay behind and watch the black belts train, started making friends with those guys, found out that some of them were stunt guys, and I was like,
okay.
Wait, what does that mean? And what do you mean? Do you mean you get paid to do this kind of shit? Is that what you're telling me? And I'm like, yeah, So then I started like blah, 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 just yakking about it at home all the time. I was like, oh my God, it's stunt person. Blah, 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 blah. And then I started seeing it places. So there was an interview on TV with a guy called Stuart Thorpe, who ended up being one of my best friends. I didn't know him at the time. And he was like, yeah, to be a stunt man, it's good to have martial arts and, gymnastics, especially if you're a girl, gymnastics is good and martial arts is good and just a good attitude. And I was like, I can tick 2 of those boxes. I can work on the good attitude. Like, I don't know what's, So it started popping up. So Dad had heard me yapping about it a lot. And then he went to work one day at an emergency clinic, an ER.
Right.
And a guy called Ryan Carey, who is another one of my dearest friends now, came in with a massive bump on his head and I think a little bit of a concussion. And Dad was, what are you doing? How did you do it? Tell me about it. And he was like, well, I'm a stunt man. And Dad was like, okay, cool. Here's a couple of Tylenol. Can you give me your phone number? Because my daughter has been chewing my ear off and blah, blah, blah. So he came home with Ryan's phone number, telling me that it was Pete Bell. So Ryan had obviously told him that it said something about Pete Bell. Ryan turns out is a mischievous little bastard. So I wouldn't be surprised if he told him he was Pete Bell. Anyway, I ring him up and I'm like, so my dad says, here's a phone number. I think you should call him. I'm like, who's this? He's like, it's a stuntman and he's a coordinator and he does a bunch of stuff. I was like, I don't know what a coordinator is. He's like, me either, but you've got to do it. Take the phone, go outside. And the lesson that came from that, and I've had to relearn it 100 times, but this is the story that I've told many times because it was quite, it was an undeniably profound moment. You know, when you're just like, even at 16 or whatever I was like, damn, that's like out of the movies and shit. He said, you could not go outside and not make this phone call and wake up tomorrow exactly as you are today, which is fine because you're a great person, you've got a good life and everything's great. But there's absolutely no way you'll end up a stunt woman if you do that. It's like, or you could go outside and make the phone call and you might wake up tomorrow exactly the same, not a stunt woman, and life's still just as good or as shit as it was yesterday. But you might wake up a stunt woman. And I was like, it gives me goosebumps every time I tell it. But I was just like, fuck, I cannot argue with that logic. That's like sound, you know. So I went outside. I was so uncomfortable. I was so embarrassed and so, I can feel it now. My whole body's like, ugh, I was feeling so cringy. And I rang the number and I was like, oh, hi, is this Pete Bell? And Ryan literally goes, no, why? Who the fuck is this? And I was like, and I had this moment where I was like,
who am I?
This is Zoe. Why? Who the fuck is this? And I think I like passed my first test because he was like, oh, okay. Well, you're the doctor's daughter. And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay. Well, I'm not Pete. My name's Ryan, but I can give you Peter's number. I was like,
Oh my God.
oh, all right then. Like, you gave me the number. I feel like maybe that was the first, like, because people must get, I now get it all the time. Oh my God, my son should so be a stuntman. I'm like, wait, oh, he falls over all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's not, I don't even know what to tell you right now, but don't give him my phone number. But so then I rang Peter Bell and did the whole, oh, my name's Zoe. And so Peter Bell, that's right too. So Peter Bell had started training with my gym coach. In that last year that I was training but not competing, he had started coming to my gym coach. My gym coach was a quite well-renowned American guy who'd come to New Zealand.
Right on.
So Pete had started coming and training with us. And I remember Warren, my coach, saying, oh, he's a stuntman. He just wants to get himself better at like the flipping side of things because he does a bunch of fighting and so blah, blah, blah. And I was like, stuntman, all right. I just assumed that meant like Evel Knievel, you know. And he was quite sort of, what's that guy from Chips? The TV show, you know, like open popped collar with hairy chest and a big gold medallion. And he had kind of started to go a little bit grey on the sides and he had a bit of swag coming in. And I was like, you know, I was 16, 17. I was like, who is this guy? Thinks he's blah, blah. We got along fine. I would do my own thing and Warren would bring me over occasionally and be like, do a correct backflip. Okay, great. And now do one where you throw your head back and you do it incorrectly. And so, he would just use me to demonstrate. So then I put it together. This guy that I'm now calling for a job is the guy that I already know.
That's
so
crazy.
I'm like, well, I used to train with blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, you're that girl. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and then I've just been doing martial arts for the last year. And I think I'd be a good stunt person. Like felt ill as fuck saying it. Got it out. Yeah. And so then he was, basically like put together a resume. I was like, I don't know what that is. I put together a resume. It was like, I wish I could find it. It was like probably 6 or 8 pages long. It's all handwritten and it's all like photos of me stuck, like glue sticked in as if it was a school project. Because I didn't know. I'd never fucking done one before. My name's Zoe and I did gymnastics from the ages of blah, blah, blah. And then at school I blah, blah, blah. And martial arts, blah, blah. Here's some pictures, blah, blah. Borders and shit.
Hey, show the commitment right there.
I would love to see that thing. That would be amazing. And so basically my timing of reaching out to him was quite good because there was a pilot about to shoot in New Zealand that was done by Pacific Renaissance, which is the same company that did Xena and Hercules and all of that. And it was called Amazon High. And it was about a cheerleader who goes back in time to kill like some, I don't know, stone monster bad guy.
Oh my goodness.
With like shiny little Converse that she would like Dorothy click the heels and she cheered the bad guy to death. That's why I did that. She landed in splits and punched him in the nuts. That was like the finale move. I remember being like, what is happening? But that was my first job. Yeah, that was my first job. Amazon High. Yeah. I'd love to find some of that, see if I can see me in the background. But that was sort of the beginning of it. I went to a big audition at his house with a bunch of the stunt people. And at the very end of it, I was going camping with some friends of mine. And Pete had said, listen, I'll be calling you guys in the next couple of days. And I was like, Pete, I'm going camping for a couple of days. Should I give you a phone number there or should I just call you when I come back? And he was like, just call me and come back. I was like, okay. And then between you and I got my friends picked me up from the audition because we were going to go straight up north to go camping for the long weekend. And I got in and they were like, how'd it go? I was like, I don't know. They were like, cool. I was like, yeah. I cracked a beer. Someone lit a joint and handed me the joint and I literally had just got it to my mouth and there was like a on the window and I was like, who take the beer, take the joint. Laying the little window down. I was like, hey, Pete. He was like, so matey, just so you know, I didn't want you to worry while you're away. I didn't want it to ruin your holiday. So just so you know, you got the job. And I was like, I did? He was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, thanks, Pete. Like, tried to hug him through the window. He's not a hugger. He was like, you know. So then I wound the window back up and they were like, you did? I was like, I got it. And they're like, yeah, hand me my beer back, my joint back. And they're like, what's the job? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I had no idea what the job was.
No way.
Had not a clue. Didn't know what it was. Didn't know when it was. I didn't know anything. So then, you know, it was 3 weeks later, my mum dropped me at some stranger's house and was like, I don't know how I feel about this. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And we all got in this van and drove like 4 hours south to where this thing was shooting. My mum was like, I feel kind of like am I being irresponsible dropping you at a stranger's house at 4 a.m. so you can be gone for 3 weeks? But that was Amazon High.
17?
Yes, 17.
17. Wow.
17, October. Yeah, that must have been, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, and that was sort of that. And then it became, I would be pulled into Xena or Hercules for a day here or a day there to be a villager or, you know, whatever. And then Jerry, who had been the lead Xena stunt double since the beginning, basically reached a point where she was like, done, I'm out, I don't want to play anymore. And fair enough, she must have got the snot beat out of her in those early days. But they were a bit like, what are we going to do? And so I can remember the first rap party I'd ever been to, which was like the season rap party for Xena. And I showed up and I was like, oh my God, there's free alcohol and there's free food and shit. Like, what? I was such a little scumbag. I was just like, woo! Blah, 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 eating it all. You know, pretty exciting times for a 17-year-old, yeah. And Pete came up to me and he was like, I'd had a couple of drinks and he was like, matey, so I don't know if you heard, but Jerry's leaving. And I had heard because Stu, who had become my best friend, was one of the coordinators and he'd told me. And I was like, I know you... Too many drinks. I know, you're fucked. What are you going to do about it? He was like, well, probably in that moment reconsidering what he was about to say. Yeah. Like, it's like, well, we thought we would give you a try. And I was like, what? I'd been in a harness. Like, I don't think I'd ever been in a harness. I still had never been in a harness. And it's like 80% of what we were doing with Xena had harness involved in some way, shape or form, you know. Sobered up instantly and I was like, okay, what do I do? And he was like, well, I'll have you talk to blah blah, she'll sort out the contracts, I need you to get a cell phone, do you have a car? I was like, no. He was like, you might want to get one, otherwise your parents are going to have to be driving to work like 4 or 5 days a week. I was like, that's not going to happen, I should probably get a car.
Yeah.
Car, cell phone, and he was like, and then we'll just start putting you in. And I was like, oh my God. I remember going home, busting in the door and being like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be Xena. Like, what? That is insane.
I'm interrupting. I know. I'm sorry. I need to tell you that I really, really love Pittston ketchup. And you too can love Pittston ketchup. If you go to www.pittston.ketchup, that is PITTSTONKETCHUP, the way you spell ketchup.com. You can use discount code HungryStuntGirl at checkout and earn yourself a 10% discount on top of it all. I mean, what's not to love? Okay, back to Zoe.
So that's how that happened.
How many seasons in was that?
How many seasons did they do? Did they do 7? I think I did the last 3.
98 to 2001.
I think it was the last 3 years of Xena, and then there was a year floating around New Zealand where the whole sort of Xena. So Pacific Renaissance, who did Xena and Hercules, but also like Jack of all trades and Cleopatra 2525 and all of those sorts of shows. They basically kind of shut up shop right around the same time that the Lord of the Rings, the first round of Lord of the Rings, shut down. So New Zealand went from training new people to fill up the amount of crews that we had working to everyone being out of work.
Yeah.
Like everybody being out of work. It was like a pretty frightening time, I think, for a lot of people. It was pretty disconcerting for me. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do if I'm not a stunt woman? I've got no idea what to do. I don't know what I'm qualified to do. I can't imagine loving anything else anymore, you know. Oh. But I couldn't imagine being a stunt woman outside of New Zealand either. That seemed unattainable on some Like, not even, I hadn't even considered it because it seemed that unattainable, Hollywood in particular. But so then I was like, maybe Canada, because it's Commonwealth, and, you know. So that was sort of the beginning of that. I applied for a visa, for a work visa, like a year-long work visa, didn't get it. Had this moment where I was like, I just spent a year using that visa as an excuse to fuck around and not do anything productive for myself. And when I found out the visa had been denied, my mum was like, oh my God, are you so sad? And what are you going to do? And how do we help you? And are you okay? And I just had this moment where I was like, I've totally been hiding behind that. Like, I just kept telling people, I'm going to Canada, but I had no idea if I was going to Canada. I hadn't even made any plans to go. Right. I hadn't booked my ticket, had nothing. So when it came back as a no, you can't, I was like, wait, what am I doing? And I literally the next day got on the phone and booked tickets to Canada. Like makes no sense, but it was like, then just go, because what else are you waiting for? Right. Like, you don't need that. Just go for the 2 months that you can legally, whatever. And I never made it because I ended up on Kill Bill. So that was sort of, and had I got the visa, maybe I would have gone at a different time, and maybe I wouldn't have been there at the right time. And had I not got the visa and then gone, fuck it, I'm just going to get the ticket anyway. Why not? Just make a choice.
You're doing Double Dare, right? At the time, they're
Double Dare was shooting. Yeah.
During
So
this whole thing, right?
Yeah. So she had found me like in the last. She had come in like right towards the last season of Xena, and so she was, you know, and that was part of it too. Is like there's this documentary being made about you, and you're like, I'm living at home, depressed, not doing anything with my life, and I'm meant to be the subject of this documentary, and like, so there was all kinds of pressure I was putting on myself. But ironically, I was putting all the pressure on myself, but not making any of the decisions that would enable me to move in any way, you know. The pressure just kept me stuck, kind of thing. So when I booked those tickets, it was just like, well, what else are you going to do? Just go do something. Like creating, it's been a thing I try and do now, because I get stuck fairly frequently. Horribly human, I am. But like,
thank God.
Is that intentionally creating, not even direction, but momentum, like just create some momentum for myself so that I move. Because once I'm moving, things form and decisions can be made because things pop up. But if you're just stuck in one spot, very few opportunities, even if they're there, it's much harder to see them or appreciate them because you know.
Like the phone call.
So I really,
you have to take that step and either make the phone call and something may or may not happen. Well, just to be clear too, Double Dare, is a documentary that I don't have the woman's name in front of me, but they did
Amanda
about
McKaylee.
Amanda
McKaylee is the director, and it was about me and Jeannie Epper.
Right.
Jeannie Epper, who's like legend stunt woman from way back in the day. She was Wonder Woman stunt double. Yeah. So that was bridging over that gap.
Love the Eppers. So Amanda really kind of hooked you up with the Eppers via this documentary.
Yeah, so it was like, I don't know how whereabouts we were in the last season, but I got a phone call on set, which never happened because I had my own cell phone, so if anyone was calling me directly, it would just come through to my cell phone. But it came through to the set phone, and one of the ADs came down and was like, Zoe, there's an American director that wants to talk to you on the phone. And I was like, fuck off, liar. And walked away, and they were like, no, seriously. I was like, what? They were like, she wants to talk to you on the phone. I was like, well, okay. It happened to be lunchtime. And it was Amanda, and she was sort of telling me about the documentary and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, I was really resistant to do it. I was like, nope, not interested, don't want to do it. That makes me feel embarrassed, but also weird. I'd done one, this is sort of an interesting, doesn't have to be a segue into food, but it is an interesting topic, as I had done one article in a fitness magazine. You know, production had been like, this journalist wants to talk to the stunt woman and we think you'd be great, would you be interested? And I was like, sure, whatever. Did this photo shoot, it felt so awkward and weird, and then sat down and did this interview, and this woman obviously wanted me to be someone very different to what I was, you know, wanted me to be, because it's a fitness mag. I didn't, and I had not put it together. It didn't occur to me that was something I just was ignorant, really. And she was like, so, you know, how often do you work out a week? What's your eating regime? What's your kind of diet? Are you this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, full disclosure, back then in particular, I was like, I drink heaps of whiskey and beer. I eat loads of McDonald's. I smoke probably a pack of cigarettes a day. I very seldom work out. I mean, I was I was terrible. And this poor woman was just like, why did they send me this woman? What is going on? But there was a couple of times where she would sort of angle questions like, do you train with with the team? And I was like, yeah, sometimes we train or rehearse before the game. Not often because it's TV. We're just like fucking go, go, go. But so, you know, she was like, do you train with the guys sometimes? Is it sometimes before work? And I was like, yeah, if we have a late call, sometimes we'll train in the mornings. And what do you eat? Do you eat blah, 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 blah? I was like, I mean, I ate fucking horribly. I would eat baked beans and the bacon and because it was like, you know, my first time, that job was my first time having like on-set food. I was just like, yes, I love it.
I mean, you're in your teens, you're basically working out all day at work, so...
Oh, my metabolism was just like, it's not fair, my metabolism. Yeah. Yeah, totally, right? And so she was like, so you eat eggs like for protein? And I was like, yeah, I guess I get my protein from eggs. And so she was kind of leading me through these questions that I didn't, and I felt it at the time. It felt weird, but I didn't really give a shit. And then when the article came out, she'd taken my words and piecemealed them. Like literally made it sound like we have to be at work at 7. So when we train before work, that means we're clearly training at like 5 a.m. and I have to eat a bunch of eggs for my... like, she had just worded it all where I was... to the point where I had friends of mine who'd seen the magazine calling me and literally just laughing down the phone. Like, who the fuck is this girl? I was like, I don't know, it's not... But I was so...
Wow, I'm impressive. This is...
I know. Well, it so kind of upset me. Like, not upset me... It didn't upset... The article didn't upset me. Well, it was more like I feel unsafe being interviewed because it doesn't matter what I say, you'll just make it into whatever you want. So when Amanda called me and was like, I want to do a documentary, I was like, no, fuck no, because like you can twist my words if it's written, but if you've got cameras on me, then you're going to be expecting me to lie, and I can't, and it's not going to, you don't want what I am going to say. She was like, what do you mean? I was like, I drink heaps, I eat real shitty food, I don't work out, I swear a bunch. I'm not that good. I don't go to the fucking gym. I hate the gym. I had a membership once for 3 weeks and I never went, so I quit it. Like, I'm not what you want. And she's just on the other end of the line going, this is gold, you know? I've got a fucking massive lip ring in my mouth. I'm just like a full tomboy. She's like, this is money. So anyway, she ended up saying, like, basically she was like, no, that's what I want. I want someone with a personality and I blah, 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 and I want to meet your family and I want to and when she started talking about my family, then I was like, oh, okay, that would be quite nice, you know?
Yeah.
I quite like that.
Aww.
So, but Double Dare was really a catalyst because it was because of Double Dare that I then met Quintin and was at the award, at the auditions. And so, you know, those things in life that you're just like, holy shit.
That documentary really does hold up. I just watched it again just to kind of refresh my memory before I spoke with you. But that really holds up. It's a really well put together. I mean, I've seen a ton since, but... Anyway. I watched it heaps at the beginning because it was going to festivals and I was going with it and me and Amanda and blah, 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 and Jeannie. And then I hadn't watched it in ages and I can't remember why I watched it. I think Jacob hadn't watched it. You know, we'd been together 4 years or something. He's like, I still haven't seen that. I was like, you should watch it. And we sat down to watch it. So weird me watching it now. I'm like, God, fuck, I was such a baby. Like, so tiny and leaving home for the first time. And like, there's just so many, like, for me personally, magical moments in it. Yeah. But I had the same thing. Like, it's a solid film. It's a beautiful insight to the 2 different stages of a career and into sort of our industry and what it is to be a female in it, or what it was more so. And, you know, just like how far it's come since Jeannie's time. And she made a beautiful movie. It's really cool. Yeah. Double Dare kind of got you... That's how you introduced to Quintin in that whole world. Yeah, so in Double Dare you kind of see, you absolutely see the first moment I meet him, and it's at the audition. And like, even that's bizarre to me. Like, I look back and I'm like, there's no way I'd let a camera crew come into an audition with me. But I just didn't really think about it. I really didn't think I was going to get the job. My highlight was going to the audition. Like, I was going to go home to New Zealand and people were going to buy me beers because I auditioned for a Tarantino movie. Like, that was going to be, you know, it was already the highlight. So showing up, I don't know, it's just, I look back now and I'm like, how the fuck did I walk in there with my own film crew and not feel like a complete spanner? But it just didn't, she was hiding the camera and it was all, she was going to talk to him about it afterwards. And so it wasn't like, guys, this is me, this is my crew. Yeah, they're making a movie about, like, it was so not like that, but it's still mind-blowing to me that I went to Bob Yerkes's backyard the same day as the audition. I went in the morning. I drank a bunch of beers the night before. I had a hangover. I went to Bob Yerkes's and I was like, oh my God, look at all these tie towels and airbags and mini tramps. And
burned myself out completely. Like, you know, the first time you go to a place like that, you're just like, candy store, yeah.
Disneyland.
Completely burned myself out. Turn up to this audition, get through the fight stuff, do the whatever, tumble some tiny things. I'm like, oh, my legs are a bit dead. And then, like, do you want to show us anything else? And I was like, well, I was just doing some stuff on the mini tramp at Bob's. But prior to that year that I'd had off, I was quite stagnant too. Like, I wasn't training and motivated, you know, because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And it's all over and I don't know, you know. I mean, I wasn't quite like that, but I was definitely in one of those stuck places. So I was rusty already. So when I went to Bob's, I was doing front folds or something, and I hadn't done them in ages, and I was getting really annoyed that I could do it. So I started doing them, and I got them back that morning. So then in the audition, I was like, I'll just do a couple of front folds so they can see I'm like, have acrobatic abilities.
Yeah.
And ate shit every single time. My legs just gave out. I was like, oh no, they're not working. But every time I got up, I guess I was sort of like, okay, sorry, wait, I've got to just give me one more try. I can totally do this, you know.
Relatable.
So there was a combination. And it's so funny, all that sort of timing stuff too, is like, had I not even taken it seriously, but had I been aware of the realities of what I was walking into, there's no way I would have drunk a bunch of beers the night before. There's no way I would have burned myself out without thinking about. We almost showed up late to the audition because I didn't know where it was in LA. And, you know, like, we left Bob Yerkes's, like, in the valley, and this was in Culver City.
Oh, geez.
I didn't know what any of that shit meant. So they were like, we should go now. I was like, all right. And I'm sitting in traffic. I'm like, oh, well, you know, so like,
Getting late.
But had I cared, it's not that I didn't care. It was that, like, had I been worried more than I was, there's a possibility I may not have got the job. Like, part of what Quintin loved, like, the Chinese fight team basically were like, they okayed me on, like, a base skill level. They were like, we can work with that.
Yeah.
She's not terrible for a white girl. We can work with that, you know. And Quintin's thing, he said to me personally, but also I think there's other interviews that he said it in, that was like the me eating shit and jumping back up again and being like, no, wait, give me another one. I can totally do this. That attitude put me over the edge for him. That was the thing that made him go, that's who I want on my set. So had I not drunk beers, or had I not exhausted myself, or had I walked in like super scared, weird, and like, nice to meet you, and like all small, maybe I wouldn't have got the job. Do you know what I mean? It's like those sorts of things that you just go. And I try and implement that when I'm walking into like an acting audition or whatever. I try and go with, imagine you're already on set, like you've already got the job's already yours, and it's not important. Like, you got to take obviously it's important and you want to take it seriously, but you got to be able to get rid of that and walk in for the fun, the joy of the job, so you can bring that, and then you can walk out and give yourself a hard time or whatever. But because there's power in that, you know, there's sort of just articulating something perfectly doesn't really set you apart. Bringing something, you know, if you've got some sparkle in there, then you're either right for the job or you're not, and then you don't have to judge it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's not like you're getting it right or wrong. Yeah. Anyway, so that was that. I got a phone call. I did the audition. I was like, clearly I didn't get it because I was never going to. And I fell on my face or my ass multiple times. Like, I bunged my elbow. My elbow is still bung from one of the, I fell on it and I landed really hard.
Elbows are funny.
I know. Because I'd already, let's be honest, I did it on Xena, and then I just aggravated it on that audition. And then I got the phone call that instead of going to Canada, which is where I was on my way to go, they were going to fly me to China. I was like,
oh, right.
What? Yeah. So called mum and dad being like, so I'm going to be in a movie and I'm going to China, and I think my life is changing currently as I speak. So that was that. So but then, of course, I got injured at the end and everything fucking, you know. There's just not, and it's just not.
Foot, ankle, something?
Wrist.
Oh, yeah, I was wrong. Nope, wrist. That's right. There's a little picture of you with the cast on at the end of Double Dare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that was a downer. Holy shit. But, you know, like, I guess that's life, right? It's so easy to be like, oh my God, the timing was right and it's meant to be and all of these things are happening, and it should have been the catapult. But it just, you know, I got injured at the end through not my doing. And it took me out for a year, and it like shook my, in hindsight, that was like identity crisis time for me. That was like, I'm in America, I've just made it, I've got this visa, and I'm broken. I can't walk on my hand. I've been able to walk on my hand since I was like 9, 8, you know.
Wow.
I couldn't even crawl. I was like, what do I do? You know, and at that point I was 21, 22 maybe.
Jeez.
And I'm like, who am I if I'm not a stunt? Now this is all I do. Like, who am I if I'm not this? And do I go home? And how do I, you know, just like, I would say I'm not a very depressive person, but I was definitely pretty low vibe. And I think looking back, I was more sort of more shook than I recognized, because as far as everyone else was concerned, I was still living the dream. You know, you're living in California, you've got all this time off, you can go for walks on the beach, you could be learning stuff. I'm like, it's really hard to learn shit when you're really miserable, like really lonely, and didn't know anyone except for people on the crew that, of course, then disappear onto other movies. Mm-hmm. Lonely. I was away from like all my close friends and my family who are like I didn't realize how much I leaned on those close to me until they weren't there, you know. So it was definitely a trying time. And then I think the first job back was Catwoman. That was weird too.
Catwoman
with Halle Berry, and I was not doubling Halle Berry, I was doubling Sharon Stone. Wait, but I know I was on, so I was on Alias. That was one of my first jobs back.
Right.
And I was fighting opposite Rachel Nichols. We had a massive fight, and we were on top of this oil rig, and we were in wetsuits and what have you, and there was a fuck up, and Rachel was meant to go under. I was throwing an elbow, and she was meant to be low, like still kind of on her knees. And just too late, I noticed she wasn't, and I pulled, but I clipped her in the mouth and made her bleed. And it was that, on top of already feeling a bit, like, thinking in hindsight, I was probably a bit depressed and having a little bit of a, like, am I any good at my job anymore? That threw me so hard. Like, hurting an actor? No. I had never. I don't think I'd ever made a stuntman bleed. Like, that fucked me up for a long time.
And that was Alias?
I was so mortified. That was Alias,
yeah.
With Shauna Duggins.
Ultraviolet, Devil's Den, Poseidon, Penny Dreadful, then Grindhouse, of course. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously you did Grindhouse, which I love that whole, how that came about, and how I've heard you talk about how Quintin was like, hey, I think I got this thing for you, and you call her Zoe.
P.S. You need to learn to do dialogue. What?
Right. So from your perspective, how did that all, and in Deathproof, so... Monica Staggs, who doubled Daryl in Kill Bill, and I think it was our trailer fight was nominated for an MTV award or something. So we went over to Quintin's because we were all going to the awards together. I spent $150 on like what looks like a farmer's dress, and I was so proud of myself. I think I did my own makeup. So country. But he was telling us then, I remember as we were sitting around, we were drinking Francis Ford Coppola's wine, I think it was Chardonnay or Rosé or something, around his pool, chatting, getting ready, and, you know, limos were coming. I was like, ooh, this is so exciting. And he was talking about this movie that he was thinking about that's about a guy who kills women with his car because he's decked it out so that it's death-proof, like he can't die in it, but anyone else who comes in contact does, kind of thing. And I vividly remember being like, first of all, you're a twisted motherfucker, and I kind of dig it. And second of all, as long as one girl in this movie is like my height and white, then I'm fine. Because I want to be in this movie. You can't tell me about this movie and then not have me in it, you know. He didn't say anything then. I don't remember what he said, but he certainly didn't say, you'll be in it. Or maybe he said something like, because I do remember thinking there might be a scene with Monica and I sitting at the bar in the background, and we might get in a brawl in the background or something, and you know, like the lead girls would be sitting somewhere and we'd be beating each other up in the background, and he'd be able to go, those are my girls from Kill Bill, and it would be a cool little Quintinism in the Quintin verse, and you know, and so that was it. And then he called me, I don't know how many months later, saying I finished the script. I was like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. He was like, I want you to read it. I was like, why? I mean, I'd love to, but something smells. Sure. And he's like, where are you now? I'm like, at home. He's like, I'm coming. I was like, what? Oh my God.
Now? He's like, yeah, I can't wait for you to see the cover. Robert did something with it that I think you're going to really like. And in my head, I was like, he's like put my head on a Playboy bunny body. Like I thought it was going to be a joke. So I didn't know I was in the movie still, you know. So then the cover comes, and it was back when originally Quintin had been thinking of Mickey Rourke as Stuntman Mike. So it was like, Deathproof, Mickey Rourke, Zoe Bell. And I was like, what? I was like, man, I have to take a photo of that so I can send it to my mum and dad. They'll shit their pants, blah, blah, blah. He was like, cool, absolutely, take a picture. But, go to page 88 or whatever it was. I was like, all right. And I went to that page, and there was a description of, like, the girls all arrive at the airport. The doors open. Cute as a bug's ear. Kiwi stuntwoman Zoe Bell bounces off the plane. And I was like, what? Like, that is clearly not just my name. That's me. Like, that's me coming off the plane. I was like, oh, she better look like me. Like, if I'm not doubling this character, then what the fuck?
God.
And he was like, well, yeah. I was like, well, who's playing me? Like, I started feeling a little weird. Like, what if he's casting? What if I don't get to play any part of me? Like, I might feel weird about that. And he's like, you are. And I was like, oh wow, I feel weirder. With
and now
that.
I feel weirder. Yeah.
And now I feel weird. Yeah, exactly. And he was basically at that point, he was like, look, let me take you out for a beer and I'll describe ship's mass to you. And I was like, what? Yes, beer. Just get me a little bit drunk because I'm a little overwhelmed right now. So we went down the road. Yeah, we went down to Santa Monica at what was it? The Library Ale House, I think it was back then. And drank a bunch of beer, and he just described the ship's mast scene to me. And I was like, I'm fucking in. I'm so in. Yeah. That's how that came about. It's crazy, really.
And you had mentioned that in kind of interviews before that he treated you more, didn't really know how to talk to anyone but actors, so he would kind of ask you your motivation, and you're like, get paid to get to the top of the stairs, but he really did.
Get paid, don't get broken.
He was more interested in your actual emotional motivation, which was...
Yeah, and I don't think it's so much that he didn't know how to talk to others than actors. I think it's literally just how he sees it. Like, if you're in front of the camera, you're responsible for telling my story.
Right. Yeah.
And my story is an emotional one, so
much sense.
Need you. Yeah. And it made sense when he said it, but at first I was like, oh wait, this is a serious conversation, not a joking conversation. Mm-hmm. Okay, my motivation is to fuck up her and all the people between me and her because she fucked me over and I'm really pissed about it. He's like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Totally get that.
And it shows in your physical performance. I mean,
and I think I'd probably been doing it on a much more superficial level on Xena. Like, I would watch the footage of Lucy on main unit would always come to us. And usually I would have been on main unit anyway, but I would still watch it when we got it back to second unit. And I didn't consciously, I would mimic certain things and movements and what have you. But there were certain times that I would notice myself doing something and be like, that's fucking weird. Why am I doing that? And then I'd watch Lucy's thing and be like, oh, I must have seen her doing that and kind of pulled it in. So there's already an element of that. I can remember when on Xena people first started telling me to make noise when I fought because I would be like, that was the noise I was making, and they were like, no, I need to make some noise, like yell and scream and when you get hit, and mortifying when I first started, just like, oh, that's so cringe, and what does that mean? But what it was that's connecting your energy with, exactly. It's connecting the emotional energy with the physical energy of what's happening. And someone just knew that if they told me to act, I would probably run away. So they just told me to make noises, and that was the first bridge for me, And then when you're working with someone like Quintin, I mean, it just, when he's speaking the way he's speaking, it makes so much sense, and B, you're just looking at everyone else bringing it, and you're like, all right, I guess I just step up to that plate because, And it's like acting in general. That shit is fucking embarrassing, and it's really like vulnerable and uncomfortable until you give it 110. Because once you're giving it 110%, then you stop thinking about how you're being perceived or if it's working or if it's embarrassing or because you're in it. But until you're 100% in it, it's cringy, And it was the same with gymnastics. It's like my gym coach gave me the same lesson one time when I was learning to do double backs, and I'd been doing 1.5s onto crash pads for fucking days, over-rotating. And he looked at me one time and he was like, you absolutely can do a double back. I wouldn't say this if I didn't feel fully confident. But unless you can look at me and say you're willing to give it 120%, you're just going to keep doing them onto crash pads. And I was like, what? He was like, I need to know that you're going to give it 120. Because here's the thing, if you give it 120, worst case scenario, you over-rotate, you do 2.5, you roll out, you whatever. Anything less, you might not make it over, you know. And I was like, right. So there's safety in giving it more. Mm-hmm. Same with acting. There's safety and full commitment. Like, then you're not exposed and feeling like self-conscious. Like, the minute you're self-conscious, everyone feels it. You know what it's like when you're watching a self-conscious actor. You're like, ugh, cringy. I feel uncomfortable. Feel bad for them, you know?
Yeah, they look uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They look really self-aware in not a good way. Yeah.
Totally taken out of the story. Now, that's great. Yeah. That's actually some amazing advice, just in general, but performance-wise. Totally. I've definitely lost any sort of confidence I've had in acting over the years just because of not doing it for so long and not putting myself in that position. But
totally. But then that was it when he was like, okay, so you're running up the stairs. Because, you know, technically I was running up the stairs correctly, up the banister, sorry.
Banister, yeah.
That's when the conversation came up for me, or for us. But the minute I understood what he was talking about, now, instead of just running up the banister, now it's like, now I have a purpose at the top. You know what I mean? It's like, it seems so simple, but it really took for him to say it, for me to have considered it, you know.
Well, that's all you get this week. Tune in next week for part 2 of the Zoe Bell interview. And hey, if you are digging this content, please like, subscribe, rate 5 stars wherever you are listening to this podcast. That is what will help keep this podcast going and growing. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram at The Hungry Stunt Girl, and on Twitter at Hungry Stunt Girl, and of course, thehungrystuntgirl.com. And as always, stay hungry.
All discussions on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and are not meant to replace medical advice. Contrary to popular belief, Heidi is not a doctor or a nutritionist or an astronaut. Although, that would be kind of cool. Heidi, maybe you should be an astronaut.